What's up, a Cinema Shogun here, and man oh man, this East Palestine, Ohio story is getting really interesting. I know it's been months since the train derailment, but now things are heating up. Let's just say that. No pun intended, and it's clear to me that these various agencies and these corporations, Norfolk Southern, EPA, the various people who are conducting tests in this area, it's very clear to me that they are now in what I would call scramble mode. Scramble mode. Now, what do I mean by scramble mode? I mean that these people were not prepared for the story to go this far. They were not prepared to still be here talking about East Palestine, having to answer questions about East Palestine. They were not prepared for this point. They thought this story would have gone away, a few days after it happened, maybe a few weeks. So it's clear that they were not prepared. They do not have their stories together, or should I say, they do not have their lies together, to explain or to lie about what actually happened here. They're running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off, and now they're all turning on each other, pointing the finger at each other in full scramble mode, not knowing what excuses to use, not knowing what narrative to roll with here, and it's just a complete cluster F of a situation. We have the EPA. They are now claiming that they didn't know about this controlled burn. They didn't approve of it. They didn't sign off on it. We even got officials from the EPA saying that this wasn't a controlled burn and they don't understand why it happened. We got Norfolk Southern claiming that the EPA knew of the plans all along and they were right there, but now they're kind of pointing the finger at the fire chief of East Palestine, Ohio. And I'll be honest with you, my opinion, even if the fire chief is one of the ones that signed off on this controlled burn, I look at the guy and I'm like, this is a fire chief from a small town in Ohio. Nothing against the dude, but I believe this catastrophe, this situation, maybe it goes a little above his head. So I wouldn't be surprised if he had EPA officials, government officials, Norfolk Southern, all of these people in his ear encouraging him, sign off on this, sign off on that. We deal with these things all the time. We're the experts, listen to us, because I'm not going to assume that a random fire chief for a small town knows more about chemical explosions and exposure than the Environmental Protection Agency. So what I think is happening here is that they found a scapegoat. They're going to try to blame this all on the fire chief. And in my personal opinion, I don't know the guy. I don't know how all of this went down, but I'm not buying it. It's like y'all are going to take the one regular normal person throughout all of this and, let's blame the fire chief. Let's not blame the train company whose train derailed, who's been behind all of this nonsense. Let's not blame the EPA who has been out here trying to tell everyone everything's okay. Go to your house, breathe, eat, drink. Everything's fine. I'm not going to allow them to just place all the blame on some regular dude that, I think it's obvious to me at least that he's not prepared for something like this. I can guarantee you, half the police chiefs across the nation aren't prepared for a catastrophe like this one. And when one happens and you have the experts in your ear telling you, we need to do this, we've dealt with this before, do this, do that, and you sign off on it, I'm not going to blame you personally. I don't want to point fingers at anyone else other than the EPA and Norfolk Southern. But like I said, the EPA is now claiming, hey, we had nothing to do with this. They're pointing the finger one direction. Norfolk Southern's pointing the finger the other direction. And like I said, everyone's in full scramble mode because none of these people were prepared for this story to last this long. They were not prepared. They didn't come up with enough lies and enough narratives to explain this stuff away. But I'm going to give you some more of my thoughts in just a moment. I want you all to watch this clip, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
The head of the Environmental Protection Agency says toxic threats he's seen in communities like East Palestine, Ohio, are unacceptable in our country.
That whole town is a chemical cocktail, and we're all lab rats. You're just looking at some of the ones who have been marked.
Today, EPA Administrator Michael Regan testified today before the Senate Appropriations Committee about the agency's budget request. Regan's comments come as News Nation has learned that residents in East Palestine, Ohio, are dealing with what one expert calls the fentanyl of chemicals.
I've spoken to families who've been sickened by the air they breathe. I've met with people who live with toxic waste in their backyard. And I've seen conditions that are simply unacceptable in the United States of America.
That was EPA Administrator Michael Regan. Questions still remain over who authorized a controlled burn following the Norfolk Southern train derailment 3 months ago. News Nation investigative correspondent Rich McHugh is on the ground tonight in East Palestine, Ohio. Hey, Rich.
Hey, Elizabeth, the big lingering question here in this toxic disaster is who ordered the controlled release, the slow burn of the vinyl chloride into the atmosphere here? Norfolk Southern says it was a decision made with Ohio officials and the EPA. The EPA says they were not consulted, and this was a decision that they did not sign off on. Now, we're learning more on who drove this decision.
On February 7th, 3 days after the Norfolk Southern train derailment in East Palestine, Norfolk Southern conducted what it called a controlled burn, releasing 116,000 gallons of vinyl chloride into the air. Former EPA Administrator Judith Enck.
I think that was a mistake. I'm looking very closely at who made the decision to set the vinyl chloride on fire. I think that decision will be a major factor in the lives of many communities in Pennsylvania and Ohio, not just East Palestine.
On February 14th, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine said he was among those involved in the decision.
We then made the decision to go ahead with the second option, which was the controlled release.
But on March 9th, Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw told Congress this.
That decision was made by Unified Command under the direction of the incident commander.
Who's that?
The incident commander was Fire Chief Drabeck.
News Nation has reached out to Fire Chief Drabeck, but he has not responded, and it's unclear who had the legal authority to order a controlled burn.
Having him make that monumental decision doesn't seem logical to me. Further, I was on a meeting with the EPA recently and asked them why they signed off on the decision to do the open burn, and they told me they did not sign off. The EPA told me that they were not asked about whether or not to do the open burn of vinyl chloride, and that they were not part of that decision.
And testimony from Eric Brewer, Director of Emergency Services for Beaver County, suggests it was Norfolk Southern who recommended burning the vinyl chloride.
We learned that Norfolk Southern wanted to do a controlled detonation of the tank car in question. We were assured this was the safest way to mitigate the problem. During one of those planning meetings, we learned from Norfolk Southern that they now wanted to do the controlled detonation on 5 of the tank cars rather than just the one. This changed the entire plan, as it would now impact a much larger area.
In a statement to News Nation, Norfolk Southern writes, Norfolk Southern alerted Incident Command of the potential for a catastrophic explosion and advised the controlled release as the safest option. The final decision to execute that plan was made Monday morning by the incident commander after discussions and consultation with Governor DeWine, Governor Shapiro, Ohio state agencies, Pennsylvania state agencies, the U.S. EPA, us, and of course those local first responders.
Now, I've spoken with the EPA, and we are expecting a statement from them, but to reiterate, the EPA says they were not consulted and that they did not sign off on this. The big question is why?
So hold on 1 second. Let me get this straight. Did you all hear what the EPA administrator, I believe his name is Michael Regan, said? That he's seen conditions that are unacceptable for America. Yeah, we know that, but you were the one telling these people that these conditions were acceptable and that these conditions were perfectly livable conditions, and you out your own mouth told the people of East Palestine that it was safe to go home. Now he's changed his tune completely, and that's why I do not trust the EPA, and this really puts a bad taste in my mouth. If you all have been following this story, then you know this dude was out there taking sips of water, telling people it's safe, everything's fine. Now he's changing his tune. Now it's, oh, I met with devastated Americans who had toxic waste in their backyard. You were just telling these people that everything's okay. Don't worry about the toxic waste in your backyard. Don't worry about the chemicals. Go home and live your life. Drink the water, breathe the air. You could plant crops, do whatever. This dude is one of the main dudes that were out there trying to encourage everyone that everything was okay and that all of this stuff that people were coming up with is nonsense, that everything's safe, and you should believe the EPA. Now the EPA is basically telling us, hey, do not believe the EPA. Right? I mean, honestly, I know some of you all haven't followed this situation as closely as others. Those of you all who have been following this closely, let me know what you think down in the comments below. That dude, Michael Reagan, was literally one of the main faces out in East Palestine, Ohio, days after the train derailment, drinking the water, telling people the air was safe, and he was not expressing any of the concerns that he's all of a sudden expressing in front of Congress. Like, what the heck is going on here? Like, why did your tune change so drastically? It's like he knows that his credibility is at stake. So when it first happens, I'm going to tell these people everything's fine. Everything's okay. Everything's safe. And then 3 months later, when I have to testify about it, I'm going to pretend like, oh, I knew it was bad all along. It was horrible. The living conditions were horrible. I don't know how they live like this in America. I mean, there's toxic waste. Yeah, this is the stuff that we've been trying to say. The people of East Palestine, Ohio have been trying to say this. And you were one of the main prominent voices, one of the main prominent faces out here in East Palestine, Ohio, trying to convince people that to just go about life as normal, as if nothing ever happened. Now you're out here, oh, it's so bad, it's so this, it's so that, because the EPA wants to place all the blame on other people, and they don't want to acknowledge that they screwed up in this situation as well. The fact that he completely changed his tune, completely, I do not like that. Because it's blatant BS. And I have this dude on video. You could go back to my past videos. We have this dude on video drinking the water, telling people things are okay, telling these people it's okay to go home and live your lives. Don't worry about the stuff you see online and all of this other stuff. And now he's here. Oh, yeah, it was dangerous. It's unlivable. Oh, my God, it's so... Oh, man. The audacity. This is why I hate these type of people. I hate these government officials. I mean, they're so full of it. They're so full of it. And my thing is like, dude, you've been on video. You're on video. It's heavily documented. You telling these people to go home. You telling these people to drink the water. You telling these people the air is safe. You basically saying that people are conspiracy theorists for thinking something's wrong or there's something bad happening in East Palestine, Ohio. Now that you can't deny it, now that people are falling sick and all of this other stuff, now you're changing your tune because you don't want your credibility to be ruined and you want all the blame to go elsewhere. You want to play the victim now like, oh, I knew it was so bad and man, I had to see such horrible things. You were convincing these people all of this stuff was okay a few months ago. But before I go on more of a rant, because man, I am fired up here, just let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.